Imagine discovering that the man you've called Dad isn't your real father. We follow one man's story to uncover his family tree, The Trouble with My Dad, in an hour here on BBC One, after David Dimbleby.
Welcome to Question Time, which tonight comes from Southend-on-Sea. And here with us tonight, the Conservative former Justice Minister who campaigned for Brexit, Dominic Raab, the ex-Labour Cabinet Minister who ran for the leadership of her party last year and who incidentally worked on Bill Clinton's first election campaign, Yvette Cooper, the SNP MP who's called for Donald Trump to be banned from Britain, Tasmina Ahmed-Sheikh, the Vice President of Republicans Overseas and, of course, a supporter of Donald Trump, Halper-Hayes, and the Professor of American Literature at London University, Sarah Churchwell. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And just a reminder, of course, from home or wherever you're watching, you can join in this debate on Facebook. You can join it on Twitter. Polite only interventions, please. Or you can text us 83981. Right. And so our first question, which comes tonight from Jeff Banks.
Why did America choose Trump?
Why did America choose Trump? Simple question. Sarah Churchwell.
It is a simple question, but it's not a simple answer. And I think that one of the problems that we've gotten ourselves into as a society is seeking simple answers for complex questions. I also think that we have a tendency to try to suggest that any big decision, any big political decision, or any big historical shift is caused by one single factor, or even one overwhelming single factor. There were all kinds of things that played into Trump's re-election, Trump's election. I can't believe I just said re-election. God, heaven forbid. I think the main factors that played in, it's all been very clearly and widely discussed. Clearly, there was a great deal of sense of disenfranchisement and alienation, a sense not just among the white working class, but among the white middle class, that they've been left behind by their government, that they've been left behind by economic policies, and they saw Clinton as the champion of those policies, broadly neoliberalism and globalization, but we can talk about that more specifically. My own feeling is that a great many people fell for what was a disinformation and character assassination campaign against Hillary Clinton. There was an enormous amount of media attention focused on her emails and the suggestion that this somehow made her unfit for office. And meanwhile, that Trump was being normalized, and all of the absolutely, not just outrageous, but illegal and unconstitutional and immoral things that he was proposing, like, for instance, that all Muslims should be banned from the United States, which is unconstitutional, that they should be put in a database, which is unconstitutional, and there's no databases in the Constitution, obviously, but is certainly immoral.
Okay, I'm going to ask you to pause there, because we've got a programme to go on.
It could take a whole hour to answer just the question.
Well, there are 4 other people sitting here waiting to have their say, and 150 people here. So
precisely.
But were you surprised? Just briefly.
I was totally shocked in a way that I have never been about my country, and totally heartbroken.
Halper-Hayes.
I cannot tell you how many times I have been asked, you're a country of 320 million people, and you gave us both of these most unfavorable, deplorable candidates. It wasn't easy on any side, and I think we have to be very, very realistic at looking at both of them, because granted, yes, there are positives that they brought, and there were some pretty extreme negatives that were brought as well.
Yeah, he didn't bring any positives at all, Jan.
I think that...
Let Jan speak. Jan.
I think that what Hillary Clinton represented was the worst about capital cronyism and the problems with our government.
Oh, my God.
And I think that what Trump represents... I think what Trump represented was the worst of what has happened.
Let her speak. I'll give you a chance to speak in a moment. I'll let you speak in a moment. I'll let you speak if you don't speak now, but when I ask you to. All right, Jan.
And I think that what Trump represented was the worst of what has happened with our culture and the influence of reality TV. And he got away with an enormous amount because, frankly, in my opinion, he was able to very capably manipulate the media and suck up the oxygen so that no one else had airtime. And the simple example I'll give you is that when he did not do well in the first debate, he actually did horribly in the first debate. All he did was tweet that next week about the beauty queen. And on Friday, Anderson Cooper said, "Why have we been covering this?" And I thought, you didn't have to cover it. It's because he didn't want you talking about how well Hillary Clinton did.
I thought you were a Republican in favour of him. You weren't in favour of him at all.
Well,
You're here under false pretenses.
No, I'm not. I'm not. But I think we have to be very realistic
Did
about
you vote
it.
for Trump?
I voted for Trump.
Yeah.
I had money on Trump. I knew he was going to win. But I also think that we have to look at it bigger of what happened in America. And we can't forget the movement that Bernie Sanders also created. The two politicians that have never before touched the pulse of people and touched their needs and their issues. And that, to me, made such enormous sense. I think our government needs changing, and I support Trump because I think that there are going to be some very important changes that he's going to make. And as Americans overseas, we need tax reform.
All right, well, let's stick with that idea that he touched a pulse, and that's why she supported him. Yvette Cooper, and then I'll come to the audience before we go on to the rest of our panel. Yes?
Well, let me just start with Jan's point that somehow these were candidates who were equally deplorable. Donald Trump is someone who has said that Muslims should be banned from the country, that Mexicans are rapists, that it is okay to sexually assault women if you are rich enough and you are powerful enough, and somehow that is okay and is as deplorable as a woman who uses the wrong email. How outrageous is a claim.
So why did America choose him, if that's
true? So if you
true?
look at the reasons why people voted, those who were most optimistic about their future and about their family finances voted for Hillary Clinton. Those who were most pessimistic about their family finances and about their future voted for Donald Trump. And I think that you also saw some of the towns and smaller cities that were hardest hit by combination, actually, of changing technology as well as the global trade hitting manufacturing industry with no new jobs in the future, and people who were feeling desperate about their future actually being exploited by a manipulative campaign of fear and of hatred that doesn't just start with Donald Trump. The Republican Tea Party have been pushing this far-right agenda of hatred for very many years, and they should take some responsibility for this as well.
And so, given that the American electorate knew all the things that Trump had said, would you side with Hillary Clinton, that half of the people who voted for him were from a basket of deplorables? Is that what you're actually saying?
No, I'm not.
But they heard everything that you've described.
Yeah, I think that people desperately wanted some change, and I think there was a sort of frustration that people have. And you've also got a lot of people who voted Republican because they always vote Republican. A lot of people who I think will have believed a lot of the promises that Donald Trump made. And we're in this really weird situation now where we're all of us hoping, actually, that it was a completely phony campaign. And we're hoping that he won't do or now stand for half the things that he promised to do, because actually if he did, that would be deeply destructive and divisive across America and also destructive across the world. But actually, what does that mean? That means an awful lot of people are going to be let down, and that's going to have bad consequences for politics as well.
We'll come to the effect, but question I asked Sarah, were you surprised? Were you shocked when the result came in?
Yes,
or had you anticipated it?
No, I hadn't. But then, you know, having not been in America for the last 12 months, I had no reason to go by anything other than some of the polls or the reports.
You, sir, there with spectacles on.
Surely the baseline is that this was just a protest vote. People were fed up with the elitist Americans. They got rid of them. They got Trump in because he was the only alternative. It's like what happened increasingly, you know, with the Brexit vote. Same thing. It was just to get rid of, go against what the the current status quo was. And to say, the young lady in the black, to say that Hillary isn't a criminal is ridiculous. She's already apologised for her emails.
They weren't illegal. It was not illegal.
Why apologise if she hasn't done anything wrong, though?
Because she was getting pressured into it. There was nothing illegal.
She did something wrong.
Excuse me, sir. There is an 83-page report that was put out by the OEG about all of the Secretary of States and their email policies. It was a policy from the State Department. It was a rule. It was not a law. It was a guideline that neither she nor Powell followed. There is nothing illegal about it.
All right. Hold on. Wait a minute. Yvette Cooper said that people will be hoping it was a phony campaign, i.e. he made promises and suggestions which he won't carry out as president. Do you hope for that? Or do you want him... You say people voted in protest. Do you want him to do what he said he'd do?
No, I mean...
Build the wall in Mexico or not?
He came up with ridiculous things. You can't build a wall across Mexico. It's not physically possible. The geography doesn't allow it. Right. He came up with stupid policies. I mean, he's got himself in there. He's either going to come out looking spotless, he's going to do an amazing job, or, which I think is going to happen, he's going to fall flat on his face in 2 years and people are going to realise what a mistake they've made.
Okay, let's hear from somebody who broadly supports Trump. Yes, sir.
I've got one for Yvette. You said that Trump supporters were pessimistic. They were the people that were left behind through voting. They weren't the people that Hillary targeted. Just because Trump appealed to this forgotten, alienated voters, that doesn't make them deplorables or, as you said, pessimistic.
What do you think of the Trump victory yourself?
I'm actually quite glad that he won. Oh. I think that this anti-establishment movement is actually going to do great, because too much we've had the Bushes and the Clintons into the White House, and they've done nothing about it. They've done absolutely nothing while they were in power.
OK, you, sir, with spectacles in the front here, and then I'll go to the man at the back there, yes.
Yes, I've spent the last week campaigning for the Republicans in Florida, not for Trump, but on a congressional campaign, and I agree with what Jan Halper-Hayes has to say. There was a lot of support for Trump in Florida, and I think in the long run he will be a good president. There is time for him to show the world what he can do, and he needs time to settle in. He's not even in the White House yet.
What do you say to all the things that Yvette described that he'd said that were on the record and Sarah said at the beginning?
It's totally inexcusable. But what you've got to realise... What you've got to realise is that Donald Trump is effectively an entertainer.
I do realise that, which is why he shouldn't be president.
Well,
Go on making your point.
Can I just say, yes, Ronald Reagan was an actor who became president of the United States.
He became governor of the state of California first. He was an experienced politician.
Exactly.
He made a gradual transition and proved himself.
And what America needs now is a businessman to...
Yeah. All right, no, you go on. You have your say.
I'm not going to win on this argument at all.
No,
you may. Just carry on with it.
America needs a businessman to get over bringing the country back together.
All right. Dominic Raab, America needs a businessman to bring the country back together.
Well, look, in a sense, this is kind of an academic argument at this stage, and
Which bit of it is academic?
Well, let me explain.
Why they chose Trump?
Well, the fact is, I'm not an American commentator. I'm a British politician. I was shocked at the things he said, and I was surprised about the outcome, and I'm concerned. I share some of the concerns people have got. But at the end of the day, the American people have decided, and the day after, I feel as a British politician, OK, I can see all the challenges, but we've got to try and make this work. And I can't see the point. I mean, look, I didn't like what he said about women, I didn't like what he said about Muslims, I didn't like what he said about Mexicans, but I can't see the point the American people having decided, throwing up my hands in the air and saying, you know, there's, reliving the election. So what we've got to do is strengthen the bonds that unite our peoples around trade, around security, around intelligence, around defence. I think that we're a close friend of America. I think close friends give candid advice. That's the way you influence. That's the way you have some bearing on what's going on. I also think, for example, his attitude towards NATO and Russia, I don't agree with that. I think that's a real problem. But we've got to both try and exert some influence on him as an ally in relation to that, but also even coming outside of the EU, that's a good example where actually we should be doing more to strengthen our ties and our support for our European friends, allies and neighbours.
Is there anything you agree with him on?
Well, do you know what? I watched 2 of the debates and I was quite surprised by the nature of them because there was so much mudslinging. But he did talk about things like public education. He did talk about things like renovating the inner cities. And so I don't think... And of course, in relation to the UK, he spoke very favourably. And whereas Obama said we'd be at the back of the queue for a trade deal, he's made very clear he'd be really well placed to sign a trade deal. And that's good for Britain. So look, I'm not saying there aren't issues here. I totally understand the shock and the concerns. But if you're a responsible government, you've got to try and make it work.
OK. You say you sir first, then I'll go to the back.
I'm slightly concerned with... I was reading in the Huffington Post and the Washington Post that he's going to put a judge, a Supreme Court judge in, to repeal the Same-Sex Marriage Act. And that, to me, is a massive concern, because I've got friends that are in America who are married, and they are frightened. They're talking about coming back to England because their marriage is going to be annulled, and then it's not even going to be recognised. And how can you do that to people?
You think he's going to do the things he said he'd do?
Yeah,
or do you think he's going to back off?
Yes, I think he's a fascist, I think he's a bigot, and I think he's a misogynist. And he is a disgrace, and whoever supports him is a disgrace.
Hold on, Jan. Hold that. Let's just stick with why he got elected. Tasmina.
Well, first of all, I'll say that America needs a president who's decent, respects people's dignity, respects people's right to have whatever sexual orientation they want, regardless of where they come from. That is what America needs, and that is what America doesn't have right now. And I agree wholeheartedly with what the gentleman just said in the audience there.
The question was, why was he chosen? The question is, why was he chosen?
Either Donald Trump is the biggest racist, misogynist and boaster of having horrible views about women and sexually assaulting women, or he's the biggest liar that's ever been elected in Western democracy. That's exactly what's happened in the United States of America. Why he was elected, we will continue to have discussions about why that might be. There is concern, of course, around the turnout. Did the polls have an effect on people thinking they didn't have to come out and vote Democrat to ensure that Trump wasn't elected and that Hillary was? But this is hugely personal for me, David. You mentioned at the start that I wanted to ban Trump from entering the United Kingdom. And that is because about a year ago, around about this time last year, Trump, after insulting Mexicans, after insulting disabled people and women, he then turned his hand to Muslims and said that Muslims should be banned from entering the USA. Now, he's talking about me, he's talking about my family, and we haven't done anything wrong at all. So what I said to Theresa May, the Home Secretary at that time, is I believe that was hate preaching, and I believe just because he was a powerful white American man, that doesn't mean he should be judged with the same set of values that we all have to live to. And indeed, there was a petition, there was a debate, and over 500,000 people signed that. And in the debate in Westminster Hall, and this is really an important point, David, I had the bravery to stand up and call him out for what I thought he was. Many around me, many respected parliamentarians, said that he was a buffoon, that it wasn't possible that he would be elected. And I knew at that time there was a potential for that. And I wish more people had listened. I wish more people had seen the alarm bells that were set ringing. And now we find ourselves with a man who has these views, and we've just witnessed on Channel 4 News, a journalist from Washington Post, an openly gay black journalist, crying because he's scared. People are frightened about what this means for them. We have to stand up for those people.
The man up there on the right, thank you. You, sir.
I think the problem is politics in America has just lost its way completely. It's a mudslinging match. It just happens that Trump was better at it. That's all. That's the way it seems to me, anyway. It wasn't about policies. It was just he's the entertainer, as we've already mentioned, and he's better at Clinton at throwing mud at her than she was at him.
Aaron Golightly, let's have your question.
If Hillary Clinton was a man, would she have won?
If Hillary Clinton was a man?
No.
Yvette?
I think that she probably wouldn't have done, because I think there were wider issues going on, but I do think that she was judged in a different way. She was judged by different standards as a woman. I think she's someone who is incredibly well qualified to be president, and I think would have been a very good president. She had, however, to prove her authority, she had to prove her experience, and the process of proving that also meant that she was then judged as being too much of an insider, too much as a member of the Washington sort of establishment that then people felt angry about. I think had she been a man, I think the question about what she would have to prove along the way would be different. I think she was also judged for, it's like, you know, when she was ill, or, you know, what does she look like, or whether she looks healthy enough, or, you know, is she having a bad hair day, whereas Donald Trump can have a bad hair day every single day of the week.
How much was being a Clinton a disadvantage?
I think at a time when clearly people wanted change, and they wanted big changes, and there was a sense of frustration that no government over very many years has solved the problem of whole communities that have lost their manufacturing jobs and had no new jobs in their place. There's been a real imbalance. Investment in the cities, but not in the towns and the smaller cities. Those big problems have not been solved by anybody. So yeah, actually being a Clinton, being part of that and so on over many years, I think did work against her, but she was also the target of so much misogynist abuse over a very, very long period of time. And the idea that we would say the woman who endured all of that misogynist abuse and kept on standing, kept on fighting, should somehow take the blame because the man who was targeting that misogynist abuse at her has won, I don't think she should take the blame for that.
Jan, what's your view?
I'd like to come back to a couple of things. So why did Trump win, and why did I start off by explaining how the American population looked at their choices? It was not easy. But Hillary Clinton was campaigning as the third term for Obama. Yet, if we looked and you followed the polls that had been going on the last 3 years, anywhere between 65 and actually the latest came out all the way up to 76, and it vacillated. People did not like the direction of the country. They thought we were going in the wrong direction.
In what way in particular?
That our GDP never got up over 1.4, that a third, we're a country of 320 million, a third of our population is unemployed, that the trade policies, according to Trump, that he would like to renegotiate, and that we have focused too much on the outside. But the other aspect of it was the national security and the refusal of Obama or Hillary to identify radical Islamic terrorism.
Okay.
You
did say a third of the country is unemployed?
Yes. Yep.
Is that the
about 80.
That's not right.
What you answer?
Well, so, I mean, at the moment, Obama has the highest approval ratings of any president since Reagan.
But the reason for that is because they hate the two candidates, and Americans love heroes. And his approval rating, because he's so nice, but they're not happy with his job.
Well, that doesn't make any sense. They are giving him approval ratings, not because they're not saying they want to be his best friend. They're giving him approval ratings in his job. The fact is that whether, I think Yvette is absolutely right, that to say that Hillary wouldn't have been given a free pass if she were a man, no, because she is part of, she has held up policies that people object to. But at the end of the day, she was absolutely, she was bludgeoned. She was absolutely taken apart by a campaign that was mostly misogynistic for 20 years, coming at her, saying that she wasn't qualified, saying that that all of the slurs and all of the abuse that we don't have to rehash. And then what happens is she comes after a president who Donald Trump got into politics, as it were, in order to undermine the legitimacy of Obama's presidency by pretending that he believed that he wasn't born in America. I should have answered, actually, the first gentleman's question much more simply. There is a simple answer, which is that Trump lied. That's the answer to the question of how he got...
David, can I just make one comment?
Well, all right, briefly, Jan, then
but Sarah, your comment of the approval rating is exactly why people did not understand the polls. The fact of the matter was, the question was not whether they said, do you approve of Obama, and they like Obama, but when the question was put to them, do you think the country is going in the right direction, 76% of Americans from Independent, Republican, and Democrat said, no, we don't.
Okay.
Can I just finish?
Hang on, I'll come back to you. The man up there at the back. To hear from more members of our audience.
You're so hypocritical. I cannot believe that a Republican can sit there and comment about Obama's presidency when it's actually the legislature that has blocked everything he's tried to do.
Thank you.
The plain fact of the matter is the Republicans control both houses of Parliament, I'll call them, because I'm British, and you've actually blocked all the good things that he wanted to do, and now Hillary Clinton is actually getting the blame for supporting Obama's policies, when in fact what's happened is that your party, have destroyed everything he wanted to do.
All right. Dominic Raab, let me pick you up on this question that Aaron made, whether Hillary Clinton was a man, would she have won?
The truth is...
In the light of what he said, incidentally.
The truth is, I don't know, it's a hypothetical question. But
answer hypothetical questions what politicians do all the time.
Well, look, when I watched the debates, I think it was very clear Hillary Clinton was the experienced candidate. I'm not sure that it was her fitness for office, the rational capability of doing the job, which lost it for her. But again, I'm very wary about being an American commentator. What I saw there, and I think the contrast between her and Bill is interesting, but I don't think it's about gender, is the fact that Bill was incredibly charismatic. He understood human nature in a way that I think people felt Hillary didn't. And when I watched those debates, I didn't really get either the vision or the retail message. I got all the mudslinging from both of them, and I thought some of the stuff from Donald Trump was offensive and pretty wacky, but I didn't really get a countervailing positive narrative from her, and I say that as a neutral observer. So I'm not sure. Look, gender may be part of it. I don't know. It's, I'm not a psychologist, and I can only tell you what I saw. But it was much more to do with the failure on the Democratic side and on Hillary's side to come up with a positive message that appealed to the people that Donald Trump called the forgotten.
You're not a psychologist, but Jan's a psychologist, because she said of Trump in August that he was psychologically unbalanced.
I did. I very much did. I was very concerned.
You still voted for him.
I did, but okay, here's the first thing, is that I gave Donald Trump the presidential temperament assessment that was used with 41 other presidents. And what was bothering me in the media was that they were confusing temperament, which we're all born with, doesn't change, and personality, which is made up by our social environment, our emotional life, and our values. When he could not embrace his win, and he was really just behaving off the wall, and I said he's shooting himself in the foot, and it's with an automatic rifle, and someone needs to take it out of his hand. Right. Okay. And so I was concerned about what was this element that was making him psychologically unbalanced at the time.
All right.
And you still voted for him.
Yeah, well,
exactly.
Because... All right, but...
No, okay, rhetorical point. Tasmina.
Let's just tell it as it is. Gender has a huge part to play in politics. If there was any kind of gender equality, we would have more women in politics. If there was any kind of gender equality, she would have been able to break that ultimate glass ceiling. Now, no matter what anyone thinks of the campaign, and unfortunately, it was so much about personal insults as opposed to policy. I think that's a great travesty of the campaign. Whilst I respect the will of the American people who voted for Donald Trump, we have to respect the campaign that Hillary fought in a backdrop of misogyny, in a collage that Donald Trump had created that was demeaning women throughout the campaign, from the commentators whom he gave interviews to people in the public, to Hillary herself. And remember, when she was ill, she just fell faint for that one moment.
She had pneumonia.
Absolutely. She was unwell, and it was like she was unfit to be President of the United States of America. It's a nonsense. We have to face up to the fact there are real gender issues in politics, and we absolutely do look at women with a different set of characteristics that has to be dealt with.
I want to stick with the debate about the future with Trump as president. Just to say, before I go on any further, that we are going to be in Stirling next week and in South London the week after that. If you can possibly come to take part in the debate, that's the way to do it. There on the screen. I'll give the details in full later on, but there's the email address and the phone number. Stirling and South London. Let's just Let's just take another aspect of this. Andrew Dinnis, please.
Thank you. Will President Trump be a good thing for the United Kingdom?
Well, let's look at the effect on the UK. What will the effect on the UK be of Trump's presidency? Dominic Raab, you take this one first.
Well, look, I think we have to wait and see what happens. The thing about him, I guess, that hopefully will take some of the rough edges off is he's a deal maker and he's a pragmatist. I mean, he was pretty ideology light. Now, I think there are going to be difficult problems for us. I mentioned NATO and the attitude towards Russia. I think the whole task of building coalitions of the willing feels like it is going to be pretty much a steep uphill battle. But there are going to be countervailing benefits. For example, the trade deal. He's said very clearly he feels very positive about Britain. He says he'd treat us fantastically. Now, look, let's wait and see what he does, not just what he says. But I think that's an area which could be hugely positive for Britain if we had a free trade deal with the US.
And supposing he adopts a protectionist policy for the United States as a whole, with implications for the world's economy, will it still be all right for the UK?
Well, no, and look, Britain has said, this Prime Minister has said, we want to be a global leader in free trade. So, of course, that's something where we're going to encourage them to think very clear-headed about what the consequences will be for America, but also for the world. But the fact is that amidst all of that rhetoric, he still said he wants to do a deal with Britain. So the question was about Britain's narrower interest, but I agree. There are much more, there are wider economic issues for the world, huge uncertainty, and that's true on the economic front and the security front. Equally, we've got to hope, through allies, talking candidly and talking sense to him, through the people he puts around him, there are good people close to him, which will be very interesting to see about his team, people like Giuliani, people like Paul Ryan, and the checks and balances in the American system. We've got to hope that through all of these checks and balances, domestic and international, we take some of those rough edges off. So I'm not going to throw my hands up in the air, I'm going to try and make it work. And I think that's the responsible attitude of any ally of the US, Britain, and in Europe and more generally.
And Sarah, do you agree with that pragmatic approach, that's the way to look at the coming 4 years?
I certainly agree that Britain needs to be pragmatic about it, absolutely. I mean, I think there are a couple of things to add into that, however. I think we need to remember that, that John Kasich said that Donald Trump approached him to sound him out about being vice president, told him he could be the most powerful vice president in American history, because Donald Trump wanted to win. It's not at all clear that he wants to serve. It's not at all clear that he actually wants to do the hard graft of running a country on the day-to-day basis. So I think you might be negotiating with Mike Pence a lot and not with Donald Trump. He might be on a golf course. But at the end of the day...
Are you serious? You think he may back off being president?
He said he would. I don't know.
Oh,
I have no idea. I have no idea, Jan, but this is a guy who quits a lot. So he's talking about... He's talking about appointing Sarah Palin.
Let's be clear. So he fought this endless campaign with all this stuff purely to become president, and having become president says, right, I've done that. I don't want nothing else to be done.
You don't think he wants to be re-elected?
I am out of the business of prognosticating. I never thought he would get elected in the first place. I'm not making prophecies. I'm just trying to draw conclusions on the basis of the evidence that I've seen. And one of the things that we have seen is that he did approach a VP candidate and say, I don't really feel like doing the job. Would you like to do it? Now, who knows whether he was just trying to persuade him, because we've been told by his own supporter that he's a liar. So I can't actually trust anything that he says.
I haven't said he was a liar, and you don't misquote me. Well, do not misquote me. But, you know, I'm listening to the extreme of the way not all of you, but the way you and Yvette and Tams and
That's nearly all of them.
Yeah, it is. It is. How you've taken things out of context and you're only smearing him.
What?
And this is
no. I am holding
Sarah, please let me finish. But this is exactly what the liberal media did. Look, do you want to understand why Trump won? It's because some of the things were taken out of context. It is because Hillary played the woman's card and the women did not like that. They did not go along with that because they felt Obama had already cracked the glass ceiling and they didn't like when she played victim. But, well, you know, the thing is that Trump got 53% of the women's vote. All right? So a lot of women were able to overlook things. Now, I just want to go back to...
Sorry, is that all women or is that
white women? White women.
You didn't say white women.
Sorry, white women. 44% of all women. 53% of white women.
But 94% of black women voted for, voted for Clinton.
And 8% of the blacks voted.
Let me come to you, Tasmina. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to make the same point. A lot of people have been referring to countries being businesses, and you even accidentally said company. And for me, economy is really important. Yes, it's at the heart of everything we do, but at the heart of that, there is no economy without the people. And without the people, we don't have anything. And I don't want to see a country run as a business that I think is going to become more and more isolated, because I think Trump's in it for self-reason. And going forward, that's just going to make the country more and more isolated. Clinton might have represented a lot of problems with the political institution, but doesn't Trump represent all the problems that are facing the whole world around the 1% and the business leaders that are not paying tax, are not doing all the things that they should be doing to contribute to those economies in a positive way that bring the benefits to the people more generally?
Yvette, what do you make of it, Yvette?
I think it is genuinely hard to know what Donald Trump will do now. And like you, I am worried that he doesn't actually show respect for people, for human beings. He certainly doesn't show respect for women, but he doesn't actually seem to show respect more widely for our common humanity. I doubt that President Trump will be good for Britain in any way. And I think that it's certainly the case that we have to work with the American government, of course we do, and we have to work hard to make sure that they still keep treating seriously NATO and NATO's obligations, that they don't end up becoming aligned with Putin and with Assad and with all kinds of other things that could cause all sorts of difficulties. But I don't see that that means we have to pander to him or to any of the things that he has said. And I think it is a real shame that Theresa May didn't do what Angela Merkel did. And I think,
which is what?
I think, well, Angela Merkel said, look, we will work with the US government and with the US president based on the important values that we believe in, which includes the values around our common humanity. And instead, Theresa May there was no sort of judgment, no recognition, actually, of the way in which Trump has won this campaign, and instead was just an unconditional response.
That's
and I think, well, you've had, it was, because, and you've had as well, you've had Tory MPs today say that somehow this is going to be good for us because we have shared values with Donald Trump. We do not have shared democratic values.
And now I come to you. Yes.
Very briefly, the heyday of Britain being America's poodle was under Tony Blair, and I think of that, if you would fairly look at the statement Theresa May made and the record of the conversation, she made it very clear that he would need to, and she would work with him in terms of reaching out and building broader global coalitions. But the point is, there's no point in firing out press releases just to make a political point and a day's headlines. The fact is, we're about the serious business of working with him and working with America, because that's the way you exert positive influence, and the Labour Party knows nothing about it, as Tony Blair proved time and time again.
Do you agree with Jacob Rees-Mogg, who said today that we have shared values with Donald Trump?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I would say we have shared values with the United States of America, and those bonds are far deeper than any one politician.
You, sir.
Theresa May, as a politician, she looks after our country, she has our jobs and nation's interests. You've made fun of Trump's hair, that's the best you've got to say. You're criticising him for making fun of other people, and you just said tonight's panel, he's got bad hair there or something like that about his hair. Yeah. How are you going to represent our country making fun of other leaders' hair? Is that what you've got to say, Yvette?
Very briefly,
actually, what I've done is make a remark about the way in which men and women's appearance is judged. What I've also done is make a whole series of points about the important things that Donald Trump has said that I strongly disagree with. To be honest, I think that most people across Britain agree with this.
Okay, hold on. If you speak at the same time, we won't hear you. Just say, go on, you can have one more go.
You said it, and like Trump does, tomorrow in the press it will say British politician, politician in waiting to be in the next government, hopefully not, is saying that making fun of our president's hair. They elected him.
He was a misogynist.
He may be that. He may be that. He may be that.
He is those things.
He may be that. He may be that. But making fun of his hair is very trivial.
And he's got
shouldn't be.
The point here is that nobody judges Donald Trump on his hair, and they do judge Hillary Clinton based on her hair. And actually they did. But the real point is about his values. We should not get into pandering to things that Donald Trump has said about women, that Donald Trump has said about race, about all sorts of things, just because he won. We've got to work with the democratically elected US president. We've got to work with him in Britain's interest, but not just pander to the things that he said.
On the edge there, you.
Yeah, I don't think we've got many people that have got a good relationship with Donald Trump, so should we be taking advantage of Nigel Farage's relationship and inviting him back?
And doing what?
Yeah, inviting him out of retirement again to actually work on a trade deal with the USA?
Right, Tasmina, I expect you have a view on that.
I will, and I'll come to that in just one moment with pleasure. The biggest we've seen today. It's a great demonstration in this audience just how divisive the election has been, and indeed Donald Trump as a person is. However, he is the president-elect of the US of A, and we are going to have to work with him. The biggest issue, though, in the question about can Britain work with him...
If you're going to work with him, you're going to allow him into Britain after all, are you?
Well, the office, of course you can't ban the office of the President of the United States from the United Kingdom. It doesn't mean to say I have to like the individual, which I don't, because of the reasons I've already articulated.
So you withdraw on your opposition to his coming here?
I stand by everything that I've said about Donald Trump and the type of man he is and the comments he's made, 100%. More now than I even did last year. The biggest issue in relation to Donald Trump
before we go on,
is
I'm exactly right. If Donald Trump becomes President of the United States and seeks to enter the United Kingdom and doesn't withdraw his remarks about Muslims, absolutely my representations to Theresa May to ban him will not change.
Absolutely, I don't...
Well, now you've changed your mind, you're saying you can come
I've talked about the office of the President of the United States.
Well, he is going to be President of the United States.
And of course now he has been elected, and of course we cannot ban the President of the United States.
Well, that's what you were telling Theresa May she should do. Maybe it's a small point.
It's an important point, David, and I'm glad you've raised it, because consistently throughout the campaign, Donald Trump thinks because it's him, it's OK to say the things that he says. He thinks it's OK to boast about sexually assaulting women. But if I can come back to the point I wanted to make about whether Britain can work with him. The issue with him, he's inconsistent and unpredictable in everything that he says. And the idea that the American people are waiting... I just want to finish my point. The idea that American people are waiting for some cosy deal with the UK in terms of trade is actually not the case, because you fought the election on the idea of protectionism, on the idea about protecting the American economy, building American markets, making sure American workers have jobs. And at the same time, he's been perfectly clear that he wants to kill TPP, he wants to come out of NAFTA. So where does the UK stand on trade at a time in the UK's political history where they need to be able to negotiate trade deals? In relation to Nigel Farage, I have to say, if he manages by some miracle to wangle himself some appointment with Donald Trump, he'll have to get Economic Migrant of the Year award for 2016 without any doubt whatsoever.
Okay, I'm going to go on. I'm going to go on in a moment to one other point. I'll come to you in the Jersey.
Can we go back to trade? The question was about trade, and Scotland have got no problem with Donald Trump about bringing money in. We all need, the world needs money. But looking at the last president of the American. The ex-president, shall we say, sort of now, Barack Obama, the last words he had to say about this country was, on your bike, you get the end of the queue. So I don't see much there for that president. And can we be positive? Can we be positive? I didn't want Trump. I wasn't sure about Clinton, I'll tell you. I'm still not sure about career politicians in this country. We've got it over here. It's an epidemic, a bad one. People never had a proper job. But at least Trump's gone out there and lost money. I don't support him.
Many times.
I don't like what he does. And if what he'd have done against my daughter, I'd have put something in his eye, right?
Right.
But can we move on and have a breath of fresh air here? Because the last president told us to get on the back of a queue.
Yeah, go on, okay. The woman at the back in white there, in the very back row.
Yeah,
yes. No, sorry. Two from the end there.
Yeah. Going back to the question of would Trump be any good for the UK, given his public attitude towards Hillary Clinton and his public attitude towards women, do you really think that he's going to come into negotiations with a country who has a female Prime Minister and look at her inequality? I don't think so. Should we be looking at people like Nigel Farage to come back and negotiate our trade deals with him, or will he just do his public persona and bully us into new deals?
Okay.
Will he ride roughshod over the top of us?
And there was a woman in white who I didn't see, but who... Yes, you speak.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, Trump will be president. I just hope to God that he has decent advisers and actually listens to them.
OK, and you, yes.
I think the question was about, you know, how we work with Donald Trump, and I think I wanted Clinton to win. I didn't want Trump to win, but we've got to work with Donald Trump. I think that's very important. But I want someone, Theresa May, Angela Merkel, anyone, to tell him or ask him why he made the comments that he did about women, about Muslims, and after that is when we should really start working with him. Because apart from that, if he doesn't answer why he made those comments,
Sorry, hang on a second. No, wait, no, don't answer. What was the person next you saying?
But what's that going to accomplish, asking him why he said things that he said years ago?
I don't know.
Honesty. You know, I think you've got to be transparent and you've got to have reasons behind why you've said those comments.
If he wants to be president for all of America, he's going to have to address the points that you make quite validly, because there is no way to continue without doing that.
Yasmina, thanks. I want to... We're running short of time now, but I do want to come to a really important central issue that was raised and that I know a lot of people have had in the back of their minds about Donald Trump's reaction to NATO and the relationship with Putin. And Pam Bean has the question. Pam.
Is the clearly burgeoning friendship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin something to be welcomed or feared?
The clearly burgeoning friendship, and of course Russia, the Duma, members of the Duma all applauded when they heard of the victory. Is it something to be welcomed or feared? Tasmina, you start on this one.
I think we should be concerned about that relationship. I read just before coming in that there was commentary about there having been discussions with the Russians during the election campaign. I mean, when things are going well for Trump, he can be amenable and he can be reasonable. But the issue comes when he doesn't get his own way, which is when we see Trump at his worst. So whether it's negotiating and having discussions with NATO or the Russians or indeed anyone else, it's a matter of grave concern to us how he might react in such circumstances. So that's something that gives me concern. Remember, Trump is a man who was consistently talking about the elections being rigged until he won them. Yeah. This is a problem.
What is your view of the relationship between the United States led by Trump, who has clearly won Putin's support, if not his friendship, and the things he said about NATO? He said at one point NATO wasn't necessary. What's your view?
Well, you know, I've really been at a loss in some ways because I'm listening to such extreme biased judgments with no objectivity whatsoever.
We're just quoting him.
Well, you're not quoting him accurately. So if we go back to the Muslim, the reason he said that was because Jay Johnson, head of Homeland Security, said we cannot vet the refugees. Now, I am not agreeing with, he could have said anyone from an Arab nation that supports terrorism. He didn't. But he said until we figure out what the hell is going on. And the media just takes that, and you're sitting here just repeating it out of context.
Okay, can you come,
so let me go to NATO. I'll come to Russia and NATO. When he said NATO is obsolete, it needs to be renegotiated, Donald Rumsfeld came out and said that he had been saying that. He doesn't want to get rid of NATO. He is also upset that he feels that America is carrying too much of the financial burden and feels that it needs to be split more evenly with the other countries. And so, again, to do this black and white, either or extreme, you're only hurting yourself if you just won't be able to even see any of the possible positive things that he is going to bring to the UK.
And Russia being a really big asset to the United States, what's he getting at? What does he want to do that Obama hasn't done?
What he is getting at is that, in his view, Hillary and Obama do not have a good relationship with Putin. He really feels that unless we open the door and start talking and finding a way that we can work with him, and that's all he's saying.
All right.
He's not talking about best friend. He's saying, let's open the door and figure out if we can have common ground.
You know what?
Dominic Raab.
First thing, just before we came on, I saw the BBC reporting that Alex Salmond had been saying, actually, he was rather positive about the view and the approach that Trump was going to take to Putin. So, you know, I'm not sure the SNP line's particularly clear. My view is that actually Russia
That is absolutely class coming from a Tory, but anyway, I'll let you finish.
Well, that's not what's being reported by the BBC. Look, I think Russia does pose a threat to NATO, and in particular the Baltic and the Central and Eastern European countries. I am concerned about America's commitment to NATO, given some of the things that have been said. I also, by the way, and this picks up on the point you made, is that Donald Trump is right. We may not like it, but he is right to say that the European countries should spend more on their defence spending, and they should step up to the plate and not just free ride at America. So, listen, the practical point is we need to stand by our European allies now more than ever. We need to exert the influence we can on Donald Trump and his administration. And the truth is, actually, if he is pragmatic about it, and if he listens to the influence of the advisers and his allies, it's possible to see some form of geopolitical good cop, bad cop that actually could yield greater dividends with Russia. That's the best we've got. We've got to try and make it work.
Do you think he has firm views about what he wants to do on the global stage, on the political stage, or do you think it's just...
I think he's got gut instincts more than a world vision.
All right. You, sir, over there.
If you look at both Syria and Ukraine, Barack Obama's been weak, and it's encouraged Russia and Putin to do what he has done. And I think that we need a strong president who can act on behalf of America, be strong, and tell Putin what to do. And I think in that sense, Putin perhaps will become less of the aggressor because he'll be worried about the circumstances.
Sarah Churchwell, do you...
I find it remarkable that people believe that a bully is strong. Everything that I know about bullies is that they are weak. This is a man who, as Hillary Clinton pointed out, could be baited into going crazy on Twitter at 3 o'clock in the morning. This is a man who, in the final week of the campaign, had to have his Twitter account taken away from him by his advisors because he couldn't be trusted with it, and yet we're being told that he can be trusted to negotiate with Putin. Putin is going to run rings around this guy. He has no idea what he's doing. He is grossly unqualified. And can I also just make a broader point, but that speaks to this as well, because it's really important, and you've said we're running out of time, which it really, really disturbs me that people are trying to cherry pick some of the things he says and then say, but we don't have to pay attention to the racism and the nativism and the isolationism and the homophobia and the misogyny. We do have to pay attention to them. It is a package deal. And when Donald Trump says that he's worried about the radicalization of ISIS, I say I'm worried about the radicalization of white racists. I am worried about the people of color in America who are reporting an uptick in hate crimes today. I am worried about the young woman on Queens who reported that girls got onto a bus and told her to get at the back of the bus because Donald Trump is president. I am worried about the monster that he has unleashed. And I think that includes everything that is happening potentially both domestically and in foreign terms. And the problem is we don't know anything about what this man actually believes.
All right, Yvette Cooper. Yvette Cooper.
I think the problem is we have no idea how Donald Trump in the end is going to behave with Putin. And to me it feels like this could go in either way. And that's why I do think, particularly around NATO, we have to work with the US government and we have to hold them into NATO and seeing NATO as being particularly important. My worry is that in the relationship, that if Donald Trump signals that somehow America is less committed to NATO, that less worried about Putin's belligerence, that will somehow tempt Putin to take action, whether it be around the Baltic states, whether it be around Ukraine, whether it be in other areas, and we will end up actually in a very difficult situation where NATO commitments will need to be honoured, but that actually Trump has given licence to Putin to do dangerous things. And And the second area I'm worried about is that he will get drawn into somehow supporting Assad in Syria, because if we end up licensing what the Assad regime is doing, we will never get peace in Syria and we will never get a settlement in the Middle East.
Right.
Here, here.
I said we... Anne-Marie Smith-Allen, I'd just like to hear your question. I don't know if we'll be able to get everybody in the panel in on it, but let's hear your question.
First Brexit, now Trump. When will our country's leaders actually sit up and listen to the desperate and frustrated voices of the people?
Yes, OK. We've only got Dominic Raab. First Brexit, which you were in favour of, now Trump. Desperate and frustrated voices. When will you start listening?
Well, we're going to deliver on Brexit because we put it to the British people, and there are views on both sides of this, but actually that is something we're going to deliver. This government is going to deliver on Brexit, so that's one illustration. I don't accept this rather superficial parallel between Trump and Brexit. I can see the superficial attractions, they're anti-establishment, but actually...
It was he who said Brexit plus.
Well, he can say what he likes, but vote leave campaigns...
What did you say? He can say what he likes.
He can say what he likes, but he doesn't define what Brexit was about. We campaigned on pro-global free trade. He's protectionist. We campaigned about taking back control of our democracy so the people watching this show actually feel they got some control over their elected representatives. He really sounds like he wants to tear down the walls. I really would be careful about... delving too deep and trying to draw too profound parallels between the two. I think they're both complex and they're both based on the specific circumstances in both countries.
Yvette?
I think what those votes have in common was, in both cases, was a vote for radical change, and in both cases was, I think, a sense of frustration, particularly from industrial towns and smaller towns and cities, which have actually been left behind and have not had the investment and the new jobs that they need. But I do also think that there are some very big differences, and people who were voting to leave Europe were voting against an EU institution. They were not voting for a man who was pushing misogyny or for racism, and I think we do a discredit to a whole series of people who voted to leave the EU if we somehow pretend that Brexit and Trump are the same.
But was Brexit about people who were desperate and frustrated, in your view?
Well, I think
you have to be very quick, because I do have to stop.
Some of the issues about the towns that I said, the industrial towns, but I think there is also a big difference. Nigel Farage wants to make them the same. They are not, and we should not let him.
All right.
I agree with that.
I think we have to stop. Tasmina, you can be very... Yeah, go on.
You have to let me talk about Scotland, David. You have to.
Well,
I'm here.
You can do it in 30 seconds.
I'm here as a representative of Scotland. So, first of all, in terms of defence estate, you've just cut it by 20%.
You're representing the SNP, not of Scotland.
Well, I'm a member of Parliament who represents the Scottish constituency.
Right.
Let's put it this way. And Scotland did vote differently in terms of the Brexit vote, and indeed all of the parliamentary leaders in Scotland weren't supportive of Trump's candidacy for the... I absolutely believe in democracy. I believe the people of Scotland's views should be represented in the Westminster Parliament as long as we are part of the current constitutional framework.
Yeah, but come on, the question was about listening to desperate and frustrated voices.
Absolutely, we should listen to people, and that's why I will say, in terms of negotiations around Brexit, the government is doing a huge disservice to the people of this country if it doesn't allow parliamentarians to become involved in that discussion. Doing deals behind closed doors, doing deals behind closed doors is not good for a representative parliamentary democracy.
Well, Brexit.
You're telling us nothing, don't
All right, we concentrated on Trump for understandable reasons right through this hour. Apologies to those of you who want to talk about Brexit, and no doubt we're in Scotland next week, so we may be hearing about it there.
I have a feeling it's not going away.
Yeah, it's not going away, but I'm afraid our hour's up here. We're going to be in Stirling next week, as I say. The following week we're going to be in London, in South London. Now do try and come to either of these programmes, Stirling or London. If you can go to our website, the address is there, or you can call us 033 123 99 88. If you've been listening to all this on 5 Live, the debate will carry on into the early hours on Question Time, Extra Time. But here, my thanks to all our panellists who came here, and to all of you who came to Southend-on-Sea, or who live in Southend-on-Sea and came here to this edition of Question Time. Until next week from Question Time, good night.
At the the age of 13, Carl discovered that his dad wasn't his real father. 8 years on, he's in search of answers and is in for more surprises. The Trouble with My Dad follows next.
How diverse is that place?